I like to keep my notes under my hat. So solar is open for business in New York in a big way. This hat is here to remind us of that. And I've got a little prop I'll use later. I think we should all take a moment to think about the power of the sun. The sun draws these daffodils and tulips out of the ground toward itself. So why not use solar power for everything else we can do with our lives? Let's take a trip to the mind of a solar guy like myself, like Ronnie, like Doug, and others in the room. We are in Westchester County, in urbanized areas, we're always thinking of roofs. Here's a roof we were on not too long ago. It didn't look terribly promising because it's skinny. It's attached to the building next door in a downtown area, and it has GAC, as we call it in our company, on the roof and next to it from the neighboring roof, and it's got trees on the southwest. But when we take out our sun eye and look at it and take a fisheye lens picture on the roof, we see this, the paths of the sun enumerated. The blue stripes are the path of the sun in June when the sun is almost directly overhead for each month of the year down to December when it's low in the sky, only 20 degrees above. And this tells us from 6 in the morning on the left all the way over to 6 o'clock in the evening where the sun is going to be. And we can use this information to predict for the 87, 60 hours of the year, the daylight hours of that, how many watts our system will produce when the solar panels see this view. So we always conduct a site visit for a candidate before we make a final proposal. There are very sophisticated desktop tools out, but going to the site and measuring is key in our view. A few months later, this is what the solar system looked like as we built it. A narrow roof, but this solar system offsets 80% of the electric supply for this particular business in downtown Mount Kisco. When you buy a solar system, you're prepaying for your electricity for the next 20 to 25 years. In this case, this is an actual cost curve of cumulative energy costs and payments for a customer of ours who had, as it happened, a $100,000 system that went in, and he was breaking even based on the anticipated utility increased costs for his actual usage by year 6. When you prepay for solar and we install the solar, we project ahead of time with these little green triangles what we think that system will produce on average each month of the year, from January at the bottom on the left to December. We installed this particular system in 2015, 4 years ago, the purple bars on the right, and by that same time in 2016, the orange bars next to it, we looked like geniuses. This system was open for performing every month. We were looking like hot stuff. In 2017, we were a little closer to the mark, the red bars, and then the winters of 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019 were really cloudy. We didn't get much snow down here, but we got a lot of clouds. So we underperformed what our projected was, but that's fairly typical. But over time, on the annualized basis, you'll see that these systems will tend to perform what a good analysis up front says they're going to do. Now, from the point of view of building owners, architects, and engineers, there are 3 things that we take into account when we look at a building and what we can get out of it. What is the tilt of the roof, or the pitch of the system that will be attached to the building? What's the shading, and what's the azimuth? Now, here, the way that plays out, here's my mini solar panel. If I am standing at the equator, and that Klieg light is the sun, I can lay this solar panel flat on the ground, and the sun will be perpendicular to it during the middle of the summer and give me optimal coverage. But we're not at the equator. We're at 41 degrees latitude. We're way up here. So if I lay this panel flat on the ground here, it's not going to grab much. I have to tilt it up to get more to get more sunlight. So that's how we think about tilt in terms of the solar world, the pitch of the roof, if you will. And the azimuth, of course, we're trying to point it in the southerly direction. It could be southeasterly or southwesterly, but not northeasterly or not northwesterly, because then I'm back here. I'll put this down before I drop it. But when we combine the tilt of the system and the orientation to south, together with any shading losses, you saw the parapet of the building next door or the trees in the southwest, if we're not losing more than 20% of the total harvestable sun, then according to the New York Sun program, we're still eligible for 100% of the incentive level for your program. If you do have an opportunity to build a perfect roof for solar with new construction, you can do what this young family did in the Adirondacks, who came to us before they began construction, before they finished the house design, and said, we want to go solar. We're doing a very efficient house. What should we do with our garage roof? And we said, well, if you do this with your garage roof, paint it due south, point it due south, and tilt it up 30 degrees. You can optimize your harvest, and the size of the solar system you will need will actually be a little bit smaller. And then that's exactly what they did, and they've gotten 80 to 90% of their solar electric use out of that solar system all year round. When we design systems, there are thousands of solar panels out there from dozens and dozens and dozens of manufacturers, but they're trending toward the traditional solar panel, which looks like this but is 10 times larger, is either a residential solar cell, which tends to have 60 photocells in it, 6 rows by 10 columns, which is 18 square feet, or 3'3" by 5'6". Or it's a commercial panel, which is like this, but longer, 2 extra rows, for a total of 72 photocells. It's got 21.5 square feet of steel and glass, and it is, weighs about 52 pounds each. The residential cells weigh about 45 pounds each, which brings me to building codes. So regardless of what tilt says and your azimuth and your shading, we also have to deal with the world of fire codes, national electric codes. So you, as an individual architect, engineer, or property owner, can drive yourselves absolutely nuts trying to research this, or you can take your solar buddy to lunch and say, what can I actually really build on my system? This is the simplest chart in the book for municipal officials that NYSERDA put out about roof codes. It gets much more elaborate. But I just want to give you a heads up that not all your roof space may be available for solar panels, even if the sun does shine on it quite well. But the solar industry can help you with that. Another way to build a perfect solar system, and this is one we just finished last week for the town of Franklin up in the Adirondacks, who had a Clean Energy Communities grant to fund it, and it'll offset 100% of the town of Franklin's town hall and library, is to take and mount it on the ground. When you mount on the ground, you don't care where the roof is, there's no roof. You can take the solar system and spin it due south and tilt it at the optimal angle for that latitude, 43 degrees latitude here, and back the next row away so the top of this row doesn't shade the one behind it. And in this case, we came up with a nice compact little solar system that's just far enough away from their softball field that the kids aren't going to hit it with baseballs. We mount this in the ground by digging. We used to pour sonotubes full of concrete, but we skip all that now. We just buy these precast concrete footings, dig a hole, drop them in, and speed rail up from there. It's a very efficient construction technique. And then crushed gravel. When we go on flat roofs, there are many different ways to do this to minimize the penetrations into the roof. And we always try to work with the roofer of record for that building if the owner has one. Otherwise, we have a certified roofer on our staff. In this particular case, this solar system is mounted on plastic baskets, the PVC UV-resistant pre-engineered baskets in between each row, and those carry paving stones as ballast to keep that system from being lifted up. They also come with a baffle on the back side of the solar system that will prevent wind from getting underneath and providing lift. And because this whole system was on a public works garage that was sliding downhill to the east, we have a piece of unistrut on the bottom, also pre-engineered with 3 attachment points that are sealed roof boots. And this system, all told with all the ballast stone, weighs 5 to 6 pounds per square foot for that EPDM roof, well within the code requirements. If you have a low-pitch roof, and it's a membrane roof, we can do something similar. This is a system we built in Peekskill where there was a barrel-vaulted roof that changed pitch every inch, really. In this particular case, we worked with the roofer to add the EPDM compatible roof boots to hold our standoffs for the rails, and then we were able to mount right over that. Again, 5 to 6 pounds. This was actually 3 pounds per square foot, excuse me, and it was a perfect solution for the membrane roofs. On standing seam roofs, there are pre-engineered seam clamp systems for every different kind of standing seam there are out there. This is on a library, a college library, and again, those seam clamps work very well. One innovation in the last number of years is that systems can now be monitored at the module level, and there are a couple different technologies that do this. There are microinverters that invert power underneath each module from direct current to alternating current, which lead to trunk lines that are then brought to your load center. Or there are optimizers that optimize the power for each module and communicate with an inverter and provide that inverter constant voltage so the inverter does less work. Either way, we now are able to monitor every solar panel we've put on every roof for the last 5 years with these kinds of systems. That gives us real-time energy production, and we have some clients who look at this every day, And we have other clients who only look at it when we show up for an annual inspection, and that's fine with us. But we know when we get an email every time there's any issue whatsoever. We have a dozen systems up in the Adirondacks, and we get an email every time there's a snowstorm because the systems stop communicating because there's too much snow, right? They stop reporting. So we get double weather report. We get, yes, there was snow in the Adirondacks, and all our systems have failed. Well, they haven't failed. They just stopped working because the snow has this 8 inches of snow hasn't slid off yet. If there are inverter firmware updates can be delivered. That's that little green box, usually online directly, so we don't have to roll our trucks out to your site. There is an incredible amount of innovation happening in the world of solar technology itself, in terms of integrating solar into buildings, in terms of providing frameless glass solar panels that can be incorporated in all kinds of nice ways with canopies and so on. There are bifacial panels coming. Now what that means is that the solar panel catches light from the sun this way, and any light that gets through that bounces off the roof behind it and bounces back up this way is captured as well for another efficiency gain. There are solar roof shingles of a couple different varieties, not the ones made by Tesla. Those are available as well. And so there are also thin films that are available that can be literally glued to tents or glued down to irregular surfaces to provide solar power. The innovation in the material science behind solar is rapidly exploding. The key thing is whether it's UL listed and whether it is approved by the California Energy Commission, which is an agency you've never heard of, but CEC lists, provides testing for solar systems and certifies that they will perform as the UL listing. And so once the California Energy Commission gives a certification to a solar panel, it then also can become eligible for New York State incentives. There's a ton of information about how we attach the solar panels to something in terms of solar trackers, pole mounts, and rooftop canopies. On the far right at the top is a tracker system we built in the Adirondacks that's completely passive. There's no electric motor or anything. It just follows the sun by heated gas tubes that expand when the sun hits it and wakes up in the morning and turns it into the sun, and it follows the sun every evening. This was for an off-grid cabin, so it's only 4 panels, but it does the job for them. There are dual access trackers that are electrical with little weather stations on top. All Earth solar tracker does that up in Vermont. This is one picture. I cropped a picture that had 100 of these in it. I was standing by the side of the road, so that's just one of them, as you can see it. There are canopy systems that are being innovated for urban environments, such as we have in parts of Westchester and certainly in New York City, where to be fire code compliant, the canopy has to be above the heads of the firefighters that might arrive. And so this canopy system from Brooklyn Solar Works does that trick as well. So there's all different kinds of ways to attach to buildings that are becoming more and more prolific. And the holy grail for energy storage, for the holy grail for our grid, and I'm quoting a former chair of the Public Service Commission board here, is the holy grail is combining energy storage and local renewable solar energy generation for the reasons that David mentioned earlier, for demand management, for time of use rates, for resiliency, and for the value of distributed energy dollars that can come back to you from your local utilities. We should also mention that battery technology innovation is exploding and booming as well. Whether we're talking about lithium iron phosphate batteries or whether we're talking about magnesium and other kinds of battery chemistries that are going to be approved by fire departments, and we also know that NYSERDA the state is also advancing and making a better battery storage incentive available. I guess the webinar for that's tomorrow, is that right? So we expect a lot of action in 2019 for that purpose alone. Here are some miniature battery and solar examples. This is a statue we did in Library Green Park in New Rochelle that has a downlight in it that's entirely powered by thin film. We pasted on the top of that top ring of this, looks like Pluto, but it's a beautiful stainless steel sculpture, and we hid everything, all our stuff, in the top of that dome. So we spent 3 days in that park climbing up into the statue, which then prompted the town parks director to have to put up a no climbing sign because all the kids had watched us climbing in the statue for 3 days. And this is a little historic bridge in Piermont that wanted LED lighting and had no connection to the grid, so we placed solar panels next to it with a charge controller and or energy storage system, which is just, it comes on at dusk and goes off 5 hours later. So solar can go anywhere. If you combine energy and storage, you can really be entirely self-reliant as well. Thank you. If you have any questions, we have a table outside, and I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.